Morning, everybody. How are we doing today? We're in a kind of a different location here. Camera's inside the glass cabinet below the eat sign. Just wanted to have a different perspective for this morning. Got some cool new kind of blue lights in the windows over there. I think this creates kind of a nice atmosphere. But it's early here. It's almost 7 a.m. Shop's just about to open. It's been a pretty incredible first month. And what I'm happiest to report is actually how many cool people that are out here. You know, we often think that the cities are going to be one way in America and the country is going to be completely the other. And there's plenty of both in both places. And I met plenty of kind of racist Americans in the city, surprisingly enough. And and almost always white. And I've met plenty of really cool, open-minded people here in the country. Honestly, I have. This last 4 or 5 weeks, boy, it's been an eye-opener for me. In part because first 2.5 years I was here, it was COVID for most of it. And so it kept a lot of people home, except for the drunks. And the drunks were all right down the street there at those 3 bars. And they'd be out there till 2, 3 in the morning, just reveling it up like it's the end of the world. And I mean, good for them, you know, but they were right outside my bedroom window. And it quickly became my impression of this town, Elgin. So it's interesting that once we opened up this place, A, how many people have come out of the woodwork, and B, how many people instantly recognize this for what it is. A refuge, a place of tolerance, a place of open-mindedness. It's one hair is bugging me. It's not confusing. My screen just went by. It's not puzzling to people where I'm oriented in terms of my belief systems and philosophies. There's not a bald eagle anywhere in this place. So obviously nationalism is not at the fore of my belief system. Even political debate has kind of really receded in my forum. There's no really room for it. It just leads to agita. And then you feel a frustration and a rage almost at times. That's a waste of energy. It's not a healthy way to spend time. And the divide is such the construct and so the point of it. I feel like to partake in that divide and that debate is making me one of the sheep. And I'd rather just not partake. And I mean, I've often said this about the game Monopoly. The only person who's enjoying that game are the people on the side of the room watching it. And that game always ends with someone kicking the game board. Fuck your park place. Done with your boardwalk, motherfucker. You know, fuck playing rent in your hotels on your shit. And greed is the end result. You know what I mean? But it's just a nice realization for me how many people are out there thirsty for this. And it's not just the political left, you know, the liberal-minded people. It's the gay community, the lesbian community, all the alternative communities that have been coming in and recognizing this is a place, oh, I feel welcome here. We've had plenty of black people come up from Rochester and other minorities as well, some Latinos. And we're in a very white town here of, 1,500 people, 20 minutes from a bigger city of 120,000 or so. So there's not a lot of diversity immediately in town racially, but there is quite a bit sexually, which I've found out. And boy, they're just coming in thick and telling their friends. And I mean, it's been a really cool experience. And it's been validating. And the revenues, even in here in January, have been very sustainable. We're going to do okay. And I mean, it's the first time I've had a decent revenue since really before COVID. There was some time there during COVID when the unemployment was fairly decent. But, I mean, I just sit around getting fat doing nothing. So this is a great exercise in me expressing my passion, my joy, and my connection with people. I love the dialogue. I love to talk about music. I love to talk about philosophy, purpose, and meaning, and what things make you feel, what art makes you feel. And I've said this before, but I need to say it again. There's not an artist, musician, painter, any type of person in the arts that wants you to sit around discussing how much you paid for their book or their painting. I mean, they want to know what it made you feel. They want to know what my writings, my interests, my philosophies, did they get across to you? Did you feel something from it? And the second that's no longer the impetus behind the art, that art becomes very commercialized. You know, I mean, it becomes very much about making revenue. And that's a very different form of art. And when you're making music or paintings or whatever books that are just meant to be commercially appealing and to sell and now don't have your message interwoven into them, those have a very different feel to them than art that comes from someone's soul or someone's spirit and someone's consciousness screaming out to connect to the world and say, yo, this is how I feel, here I am. How you feel about that? Does that fit inside what your box is? Because that's how my clock is ticking. So it's been cool, and I enjoy the philosophy talk. I enjoy having 3 or 4 people on the couch and us sitting there and mashing it up. And it's cool when like a lesbian couple will come in 2-3 weeks ago, and they come back a week later with 3 of their friends, and they stay for 2 hours. And then some of those friends come back with some of their friends. And again, that immediate revelation of these people that what this place is going to be about when they walk in, it's kind of a jaw dropper. They're just like, and they feel embraced. They feel, like I said, they don't feel like they're being tolerated. They feel like they're being embraced. And that's a different feel for most minorities, for most immigrant groups. It's just not a common feeling. I had a brother, an old black man from St. Louis, in the shop yesterday, I believe it was, perhaps the day before. The days kind of blend together. And he was near in tears, sitting there listening to me playing old jazz records, talking about his nana and his aunties and his older relatives back in St. Louis, some of them who played jazz back in the day. And to hear me talk about how I feel about black music in America, it was moving to him. And it wasn't like I just had a whole hour and a half to sit there and express it. It was just a few short things I said about how the winners of the history books get to write, the winners of the wars get to write the history books. The losers of those wars get to make great art. And the black experience in America is one of overcoming great oppression. And it makes it biblically important. And he could tell my reverence and respect for the music was strong. Obviously, the collection says that itself. And so just sitting there, and then my friend Anthony walks in, who wears his rainbow bright. You know what I mean? He's a proud gay man. And in this community, that takes a lot of strength. So I admire him greatly, just how proud he is of who he is. Very public wedding recently, last summer I think it was. He's already a dear friend as far as I'm concerned. I've seen him 20 times in here. And he's just been a great supporter and a cheerleader. And I mean, someone who I just think he's a great guy. And he came in and saw this old brother here whose name was like Fada or something like that. It sounded like it was slightly Muslim perhaps, but he was definitely an American black man from St. Louis. He could have possibly converted at some point, but Fadar, something like that. I can't remember. But he saw the brother sitting in here, and it just made him smile too, because he recognized that people are driving 20 minutes out of the big city of Rochester to come to this small cow town to soak in an atmosphere that you can't find very many places. A place that's free of that corporate, ugly, overbearing presence that makes everything feel sterile and not interesting. It's amazing how many corporate places can put non-interesting art on the wall. It's amazing how many coffee shops I go into. I'm like, that is some of the most boring art on the wall I've ever seen. Coupled with some sterile music, just makes for a very blanched experience. And I guess that's fortunate for this, because people walk in here and feel the difference. And so that's just what I want to report today, just how pleased I am and how proud I am of people's impression of this place walking into it. And that's exactly what we wanted. I mean, we wanted it to feel like a place of tolerance. And I've told people before, we often want to put a speakeasy in the basement at some point and have that be called tolerance, which has the wonderful duality of how many cocktails can you take back, but also how broad is your tolerance. Great name. Love to have that shining out in red on the west side of the building. Like, doesn't come on until 10 at night. You know what I mean? Boom, tolerance. You gotta come out for a beverage and some swing music, perhaps. I mean, we'll see. Next, I want to talk to you about Nat Cole. We talked about Nat Cole a little bit lately, but Nat gets a little bit misrepresented. His commercial appeal, Natalie Cole, Unforgettable. I mean, for a lot of us, our Nat Cole kind of starts and stops there. And we did an episode on Nature Boy recently, and I was talking about the Bobby Darin version, the John Coltrane version, and I think it was Teddy Charles version as well we were talking about. There's a lot of versions of Nature Boy out there. It's a great melody. And at the time, I remember there was a Nat Cole version of it, and I don't know what happened to my pressing of it. I thought it was maybe on a 45, and I couldn't find it. Maybe it was on a collection. And then I realized it might have been on my grandpa's records. My grandpa had records that my mom inherited. And as a young boy, I played his Nat Cole and the Terry Belafonte records. And so maybe I remember Nature Boy from that. But all the same, I couldn't find it, so I bought that 10-inch, which I showed you recently, which has Nature Boy on it. And honestly, a Bobby Darin version to me is much cooler. I love Bobby Darin's version, but all the same, Nat Cole is a guy that has a lot deeper history than what we just remember him for. And he was a great singer, without question, one of the great voices of the 20th century. But he was also a fantastic player. And he plays with Lester Young in a trio. He's making instrumental recordings early on in his career. And once in a while, he would make a jazz record for Capitol that was pretty outstanding. And I'm going to show you one right now that I just got this quite recently. And boy, is it fantastic. I bought a bunch of records from a fella. And he had a bunch of Nat Cole records for $3, $4, $5 odd. I made him an offer on like 11 Nat Cole records. And some are more schlocky, you know, some are with strings, some are very, he goes all over the place, like a Ray Charles does. You know, he's not scared to cover American country songs, Nat Cole. But this one here is a stronger jazz record. I do think it's interesting how the brothers in the back are kind of out of focus. Not sure why that was necessary. But After Midnight, and according to my friend Jean-Michel, this was recorded in the middle of the night, like 4 in the morning, which he heard from one of the musicians personally himself. But the sidemen on this record are just outstanding. The great Willie Smith, who's a sax player, I think he's an alto player, that was from Charleston, South Carolina, and he's kind of very forgotten today. He played with some pretty big bands, including Duke Ellington, Harry James, Jimmy Lunsford, who was a big part of his orchestras for a while. But just a great player. And he shows up in the 50s, some as a sideman here and there, but doesn't get a lot of work as a leader, which is partly why his name was slipped into such obscurity. The great Harry Sweets Edison is on this record. And maybe that's why they're out of focus, because they're not those guys in the background. But Sweets Edison is on this, and I mean, Sweets is one of the great trumpet players. He introduces the muted sound of the trumpet to the world, the one that Miles Davis helped make even more famous. Stuff Smith is on this, who's a violinist who can play the shit out of some jazz, man. He's a great little player, and he's a brother as well. And he's got some records on Verve, Stuff Smith. He plays with Dizzy Gillespie at times, believe it or not. And then Juan Tizzle is on this as well. And Juan Tizzle is a fantastic trombonist, a real sweet, caramely sound, who plays with Ellington for a long time. Tizzle's one of those great bone players from that orchestra that plays a lot of the sweet and creamy. He's not like the Al Gray where he's full of all the tricks like Tricky Sam Natton even. He's much more of a smooth, creamy, and on here he's just lyrical. He's just singing through the bone. And I think the trombone's such a cool instrument in many ways for how varied a sound it can produce. From that warbly growl to the muted sweetness to just the soft, gentle singing effects of it. It can sound very like a man's voice at times. I mean, it can be quite nimble and dexterous in the right hands, a.k.a. Jimmy Cleveland and J.J. Johnson. I said Jimmy Johnson. That's kind of silly. He was a famous football coach. I don't think he could play the trombone. I'm sure there was actually, I think it was a Jimmy Johnson's a race car driver. I'm guessing he didn't play the trombone either. I think there's quite a few Jimmy Johnsons in the world. It's a pretty standard effing name. But again, Nat Cole, he's a player through and through, and he will knock your socks off if you give him the chance. And again, a lot of it's what you buy by singers. Some records with giant orchestras are going to sound very schlocky and mass-produced for white audiences. And other records by singers that are more with small jazz combos are going to be far more intimate and personable, and for me, more enjoyable. I'll be right back. I had to turn the shop lights on so people knew when we were open, so it's a little bit brighter in here now, I'm sure. Next, I want to talk to you about one of my favorite records of all time. It's peripheral jazz at best, but it's still a record I love dearly, and it's by an artist called Blue Six. A Beautiful Tomorrow. Just a beautiful scene there. It really paints a picture and creates an atmosphere. An artist by the name of Jay Dennis, or Dennis, I'm not sure how it's said. Denny's, maybe Denes, is the guy behind Blue Six. And I first discovered his music through Miguel Miggs, who's a kind of a deep house cat who I like a lot. His record cover for Naked Music, which this is on, really caught my eye. A lot of the Naked Music album covers are just amazing. And maybe I'll try to take some pictures of them today and we'll put some in there so you can see how cool they are. But they're very eye-catching. A lot of electronic music, house music, has kind of boring covers often, or very kind of like just label-centric covers. Naked Music really did some stuff that really jumped out of the bins when you were flipping through some recent arrivals. And you realize pretty quickly that these are all related, and as the collector that I am, and I love the music. It's really organic. It's not just like diva banging disco house music. It's much more deep and organic with real instrumentation, real R&B like vocals. This record is a luxurious dive into urban R&B with hints of jazz, hints of the blues. It definitely echoes a lot of that era, but it's very modern. The bass player on here, this is the Dave Boonshoff, I think his name was. He's just an outstanding bass player. Yeah, Dave Boonshoff. Again, the production's impeccable. If you want a record that sounds great, that you can put on and play from front to back, and just chill and relax to, I highly recommend you get this Blue Six, A Beautiful Tomorrow record. And then you can dive further into Naked Music from there. The first Miguel Miggs record, Better Day, I think it's called, maybe. That's an incredible record as well. But, I mean, talk about a record that I've listened to endlessly. I can play it on repeat. It's great for intimate, romantic times. It's great to play loud and bang at a party, or play it soft and have it be background lounge music. It's got that duality to it based on how loud you play it. Just incredible production, which is the real key with a lot of this electronic music. It's made by guys who are producers who just make good quality sounding stuff. And the album is less dance-centric than the 12-inch remixes often, which are often remixed by house DJs or minimal DJs. So there's a lot of different elements going on with some of the remixes, but the standard versions of these songs are always hints of club music with elements of more down-tempo and relaxed R&B. I just think if anybody likes to chill to fusion or to modern urban R&B, or likes hints of jazz with some saxophones and some nice instrumentation behind simple singing, this is a record I think people will love. Like I said, I'm never really tired of it, and I've enjoyed pretty much everything that Naked Music has brought to the table. I came through Naked Music through Ohm Records as well, which is out of San Francisco, where Jay Dennis's first project was Naked Music NYC, which came out of San Francisco. But that project's really good as well. It sounds a little different than what he does at Naked Music, but it's still the same guy, and it's probably just a bit of a maturation on his part as a producer and a songwriter. But again, good song structures, great singing. Lisa Shaw sings on a lot of it, who's a great singer from this genre. Just a record I really think most people will go, oh, I don't like that kind of music, but would listen to it and go, oh, I really like this. And so even those of you who are shaking your head going, I don't care about this kind of music, check out Music and Wine. Make sure you find the original version with the vocals. Music and Wine is one of the great songs of that era, late 90s, early 2000s. And it was played in clubs throughout the world. And so it actually might be more familiar than you think. but it's just a great tongue wetter for what this record's about. And songs like Pure, I just love. Let's Do It Together, a great opening track. Sweeter Love is actually kind of a throwback to his earlier stuff, but it's a nice track. All I Need is very good. Yeah, it's a great song. Love Yourself, Pure, Beautiful Tomorrow. It's a great record that I think very few people are going to play that and go, oh, I hated that. You know what I mean? And there's a lot of electronic music that I don't like. It can be very loud and dissonant and jangly and too in your face. And this is much more melancholic and romantic and luxurious and velvety and purples and blues. And I think that colorscape there really kind of captures the sound incredibly well. So that's today's episode. We're going to keep it short and sweet. I got more fun stuff in the pike for you. If you did not check out that episode about United Artists and the Hollywood record labels, there's some really cool records on there, on United Artists especially, that I think people should see. The Warner Brothers has some great jazz stuff. The MGM has some pretty good stuff. And the ABC label has some fantastic stuff. There's some great records on those labels that shouldn't be ignored. So we didn't get a lot of views on those episodes for some reason. So check that out and put your comments on it so I know you're still watching, guys. Talk to y'all soon. Peace. Morning, everybody. Just saying hello real quick. Just heard the faint sound of a siren off into the distance. It's a sound I'm almost nostalgic about. It's just that urban, jazzy, noir, Naked City, man. I just love it.